I remember when I was a brand new dungeon master and just, all full of zeal for the game. And as I've said before, you just boy, when I get into something, I get into something. So I was just watching, endless everything I could find on YouTube about dungeon mastering and the game itself. And boy, I owe a great debt of gratitude to I'd say my biggest early influence in how this game works. Just it in the sense of it being just this story driven, like what is thrilling for the players. How do you do this? How do you DM? Matt Colville, thank you so much for so much content, just talking it through. I'm going to carry on the tradition and make longer videos than I ever intend. As a new dungeon master, I was consuming everything I could find about how to do it. And, you take what you take, you leave what you leave. It depends on the kind of game that you want to play. But here's my voice in the chorus of Dungeon Masters and what I have to say about what works for me prep-wise for the kind of game that I want to play. So the kind of game that I want to play and the kind of game that I am playing that is quite successful with these kinds of people. I understand I have a great privilege in having two groups of dedicated fellow grown-ups, five players each, who are willing to come on a long-term, regularly scheduled, cooperative storytelling adventure. It's something else. So you won't see videos from me about how to deal with problem players or how to politely kick somebody out of the group or setting boundaries and when they're broken. Like I'm quite privileged to say we just don't have those kinds of problems at my tables. So that all said, the prep that works for me is to it all comes down to writing. Now really, aside from the in the moment, like true, like flow state game sessions, and we've had plenty of those moments, man. It has gotten good. It has gotten good. But aside from those, which can only happen at the table, that's the magic of D&D. It really is. Everything flows back from that, right? The most fun part for me as a dungeon master is the writing. And by writing, I mean, and I'm fussy about it. I am. I've come to be comfortable, just being like, yeah, I wear a little. I'm left-handed, and I like fountain pens, and I don't like page smudgies. So. So, I journal a lot. I write and I write and I write and I write. And what am I writing? It's not always about D&D, but I don't always write about D&D. But when I do, it's the most fun part where I'm in conversation with my world and with what the characters are doing. And I've jotted down, like, this is turning out to be a video less about prep than I thought, and more about the value of journaling to a DM, and their world. I said before in a previous, on the topic of preps video, that you should be prepping the deep structure of your world and having a bunch of random names that you can slap on things at the ready, because that is hard to improv. But the fun, the really, I know, like, I there are some DMs, I know there are plenty of DMs out there that will agree with me that, oh man, wouldn't you just love to crawl into this world and you are inventing economic systems and deciding the impact of those systems on your world's history and why these people are on the outs, and like just fabricating the most wonderful, dramatic geopolitical landscape that you can possibly imagine with dragons and wizards. So what could be better than that, honestly? And that means I think what I'm doing is I'm giving you license not to feel guilty about just like endlessly spinning out world building stuff, knowing for a fact that 90% of this conversation you're having with yourself, in your version of a thinky book, is never going to make it to the table. But you are building such strong bones that whatever does emerge at the table will feel grounded. It's of the same, surely, of the same principle as, like, grandfather Tolkien, invented a language before he, started. Granddaddy Tolkien has deep lore, deep lore, that if you only read The Lord of the Rings, there'd be mention to here and there. And with a little system that I've given you, develop your deep bones by just endless journaling. As much as fill notebooks, do it. Like, indulge in that. Don't feel bad about it. And then at the table, have your names, have your just, and you can have them keyed to, like, if you've got a few different sort of civilizations working here, have like a list of names that are phonetically, kind of similar, like identifiable as whatever your elves and dwarves and whatever you've pasted onto that. So journal. And here's a few things you can journal about. Just starting with, now there's another end to this, just starting with that, the little detail that you're thanking past you for doing some post-session notes. Do them. But be lazy about them if you want. Like, just write down a couple of little details. It will be far more helpful when you're going back to do your prep, later on, when you've just got a couple of little scribbled notes, as opposed to trying to make sense of like an initiative order that you scratched into a page. Yeah. So start with that one, a couple of little details, and honestly, just start writing. Like, just go freeform. Like, what can you spin up from that? What do you remember? What does it connect to? Does it cue an idea for the next beat in your story? Oh yeah, here's another a separate thing. This is like starting cold. The engine has gone cold. You haven't had a session for a month and a half, 2 months. God forbid 3. Now your campaign is in peril, but you've gone for a while, and it's like, oh, what were we doing, and why did we want to do it? Listen, no players will know the world better than the DM. They might challenge you on a misremembered name or something, but honestly, people don't care that much about that. It's just like, oh, you can retcon the name, or you can say, oh, it translates differently in the language you're currently speaking, because all of this is translated from Common into English. Don't you know? Names you can get around. But your players don't know the deep structure of your world like you know the deep structure of your world. So starting cold, what you can do is, just as a journaling exercise, nobody's ever going to see this, just try to retell the story as accurately as you can from the beginning. Just go. Writing is thinking, and memory is the residue of thought. Did I mention I'm also a high school teacher? Some of that bleeds over into my DMing. There's a whole other video to be made about the one-to-one mapping of like English curricula and the playing of Dungeons and Dragons and how you can do that in your classroom. I've tinkered with it a little bit. Yeah, start with that one little detail that you wrote down in your post-session notes from last time, or if you need to cold start it, just start going. Just anything. You'll be surprised at how many connections start to pop and how many like moments you're reminded of, and they're going to be the same significant moments that your players will remember as well. That's why they're popping. There was like, you guys have talked about it since then. They are the moments. And that's all the stuff you want to keep anyway, if you're thinking of this whole game as a story. So don't worry about that. Oh, and here's my third one, and this is important for DMs to remember. You are doing this for your players. So in prep, this is another good way to cold start, in fact. You don't even have to have any post-session notes from last session, but and do drudge it from memory. Try not to look at notes, but name each character and one important thing about them. You don't need to have memorized their class and their species and all that. Man, players love their stats and the numbers. Don't tell my players this, but I do not give a shit about their character stats and class, and I can get a feat at this level or whatever. Like, you guys, I have enough to deal with on my side of the screen. I trust my players not to break the game or be like, min-maxers or whatever. So, and they come up with some dope stuff. So it's all good. So name each of your players' characters and one important thing about them. and then just journal, write, and then I will tell you, for me, what I do is, like, I've got this session coming up on Sunday. This is what I'm going to be doing, and I'll tell you how it's going later. Is just journaling like mad, and then the session's on Sundays, so I'll probably take like Sunday morning even. I like a little bit of last minute cramming. Open up the monster manual. Who do I expect them to encounter today? Oh, there's that special ability. Remember to, because I forget what my monsters do all the time, and it makes combat more interesting if, like, you're using all of the beholders and like eye stalks and stuff. So know how your monsters work. Do a little bit of that sort of grindy homework stuff. But meanwhile, you have built deep and strong bones to your world, the religions, the cosmology, the history. So when these NPCs and that pop out, they're growing out of this deep structure, and so are therefore easier to improv, because like, okay, well, this would make sense. Like, make it like our world, grow it as a skin on top of our world. The more familiar, the better. It doesn't take much reskinning to turn 2026 Eastern Ontario into Fantasyland, Magic and Dragons. You can have all the same kind of political stuff going on. Anyway, yeah, when I get closer to the day, it's Wednesday today. Session is on Sunday. I like to start a few days out. Start my journaling that kind of, like, recalcifies the bones, and like, oh yeah, I remember, okay, like the vibe of this world and the big broad strokes of what I had planned for them, and maybe a couple of surprises and what have you. So I'm gonna start working on my notes. I'll talk to you again. I don't know, maybe tomorrow, and let you know how it's going. So hope to see you at the table. Later.